Hi, I'm Father Mitch Packle of EWTN Open Line Wednesday. And we have an email. It says, Dear Father Mitch, if space and time started at the time of the Big Bang, say 14 billion years ago, and time did not exist before that, we must assume that the creation of the universe and the creation of God were contemporaneous events, unless God is a creation of man, rather than the reverse, and therefore happened later. What is your take on this? And please don't answer that God existed before the Big Bang and created it, as that would be quite meaningless. There is no, quote, before the Big Bang. Best regards, Nick. Well, you asked very nicely, Nick, that I don't answer that God existed before the Big Bang. But as nicely as you might ask that, I'm afraid I am going to answer that God existed before the Big Bang. Now, one of your problems, Nick, is that you assume that God is a creature. You assume that, like all of matter, that God came into being at the time of the Big Bang. And you are the one who has, in fact, the far bigger problem of explaining A, where would God have come from, and B, corollary of that, where would the Big Bang come from without some reality greater and prior to the Big Bang, making the Big Bang possible? Because the physical universe has a beginning. This is something that we say, all right, that's when time begins. And you are correct to say that space and time started at the time of the Big Bang. And time did not exist before that. We have no problem with that. But this is why it's not only Catholics looking at the Bible, but it is Catholics and Orthodox and some Jewish philosophers and some Muslim philosophers and Aristotle, the philosopher, who is one of their teachers, who made it clear that there is a prime mover. Because something cannot have motion without another force putting it in motion until you get back to the point of there being a prime mover. So you can say, well, there was something that caused the Big Bang. All right, well, what caused that? And as a matter of fact, at this point, there's nothing that physics in any way can say existed before the Big Bang. It's at the Big Bang that nothing was created, and then when the Big Bang occurs, everything is created. It doesn't have the shape that it does now. That's what took 14 billion years to develop. But it did have a definite beginning, and a force greater than that had to be its beginning. And however far you might want to hypothesize that something was before that, even if you try to say, well, maybe there were other universes before that, that's the multiverse theory they call it. Still, what was the original Big Bang? And this the term God does not refer to a creation, but rather to uncreated being. Now, Nick, I assume you've not been privileged to do any philosophy, at least any serious philosophy. And so I'm going to hope that you start to do so. And my favorite introduction to philosophy for somebody like yourself is a book that goes through the pre-Socratic, that is the earliest philosophers, and does the best job of explaining their importance. And then goes through Plato and Aristotle up to modern times. And it is called The Last Superstition. It's by Dr. Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R. He is very clear and wonderful in the way he writes. And I want you to take the time to follow the line of thought. This isn't an act of faith. It's a line of reasoning. And it'll do you and anybody else who picks up Dr. Feser's book, including me, an awful lot of good. Thank you.